Good morning, cricket fans, and welcome to the Catch It podcast.
Oh, what a catch!
I'm Andrew Lush, and I started this podcast to have some interesting and insightful conversations about analytics and the stats behind the action, and to develop myself as a presenter.
Good! Oh, brilliant!
I hope you enjoy our discussions and debates.
That is an absolutely outstanding catch.
Benji Hoppitt, welcome to the Catch It podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good mate. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Bright sunny Monday morning here in Sydney and ready to kick off.
Because you've been all over the world now with your analysis. You've been with the Sydney Sixers. You started off at New South Wales, and then you've also been in the WPL. Going back to when you were growing up and potentially playing cricket and stuff, do you reckon this would have ever happened for yourself?
No, as you grow up as a kid, you always think you're going to play for your country, don't you? So it was always cricket for me growing up, amongst a number of sports, but cricket was always the number one. But no, even when you told me when I finished school, finished university, that I'd be able to be in a job still working in cricket and having the opportunity to sort of travel the world and travel the country a bit, I wouldn't have believed you at all. So no, very fortunate, very fortunate.
That's class. Who was your initial inspiration to get you into cricket? Was it a specific player or a specific family member?
No, mum and dad always tell me that they were never really into cricket growing up. And then, when I was sort of 5 or 6 years old, they'd have the test on and I'd just be sitting there watching it all day in the summer. And I thought, okay, well, we better get him into a team and see if he likes playing. So no one in particular. I mean, my idol growing up was always Michael Clark. I don't know why, but he was always my number one.
New South Wales boy as well.
Yeah. He's a local Western Sydney boy, which is where I grew up as well. So yeah, maybe there was something there.
When do you feel like you kind of potentially passed on from viewing the game as just playing, or you wanted to view it in more of an analytical way? When did that kind of spark in yourself?
I guess, I was a wicket keeper when I played, so I always enjoyed, if you weren't sort of captain, you're always sort of the unofficial vice captain, helping out with the field placings and being that sort of soundboard for the captain in the different teams I'd play in. So I guess there's always that aspect to it where you weren't just sort of rocking up and playing. There was that sort of deeper level of thinking behind it as well. I probably played till I was about 20, 21 and then gave it up for a year. And then, after university, had a couple of opportunities with some internships and eventually made my way back to cricket, which was extremely fortunate. A lot of people don't get a job in sport full stop after university, let alone, in the number one sport that they played growing up. So, pretty lucky to be where I am for sure.
When you initially was in the New South Wales circuit, from my research, you were kind of spread between the two, the men's and the women's. How important was it for you to then your job to narrow slightly and just be focused on the New South Wales women and the Sydney Sixers? Was that really quite developmental for you?
Yeah, that was everything. I think, when you're the analyst in the team, you have to find ways to provide value to your specific team. Something I've learned going around the world as well, that, in all the different setups, the squads are all very different, and some are older groups, some are younger groups, and you've got to sort of tailor what you deliver in order to be effective and be valuable. So I think, being able to go just onto the one team and then being involved with them for the whole 12 months. So you're there at every session in pre-season, travel for every game. You develop relationships with coaches that are a lot closer than they might have been. When I started, you might be covering a men's session on a Tuesday, and then you miss the men's session on a Wednesday because you're at the girls, and then the girls are playing on Thursday, so you miss another men's session, and then you're back on Friday doing a men's and missing the women's. And yeah, you're sort of going in and out of everything, and you're not actually fully involved in the setup of either. So they learn to sort of live without you. And when you're there, it's a massive bonus where, when I was able to go just onto the women's program, it was awesome just to be fully entrenched in a program and be able to sit on day one of preseason and sit with the coaches and say, hey, I'm here with you for every session, every game. And it just opens a whole new realm of possibilities for what we're able to do with our girls in training and then in games in a whole program as well.
Have you seen your role develop more in that kind of training realm, in the fact that you're not just there? Because I know from personal experience, when I first got in as an analyst, you turned up to games, you coded them, and then you went away and worked it all out in kind of like in an office or kind of in your like house. Has it been nice that role in training and stuff has developed, and how has that developed?
Yeah, I think that sort of went hand in hand with going onto the one team. So again, it was a big juggling act trying to be on the men's and women's teams. And I was listening to the other podcast I did with James the other week and talking about the viability of analysts going full time and or what are you doing in the other 6 months of the year that you're not in season. And that's a big one for us. So there was always one full-time role at Cricket New South Wales. Now we have 4. So that department has expanded massively. So we're fortunate to have the backing from our heads of cricket and directors of cricket to really push the analysis space. But that's, where we sort of think we provide more value than other teams or other organisations is we place a big focus on the training environment. And I think for our girls as well, they're always learning and we've got more training hours than ever now with the new MOUs and the new agreements where they're getting paid more money now to play domestic cricket, which is awesome. And which means we can spend, and we can spend more time training with them and upskilling them and developing them to become better. And 90% of those hours are going to be in training across the year. So again, being on one program, so fully entrenched in that in the women's side for 12 months of the year and being able to work all through preseason and doing things at every training session, still making it purposeful, not just collecting footage or numbers for the sake of it, but trying to find a way to have an impact at every session or most sessions across the year is a big one.
It must be quite nice, the fact that you said you have kind of 4 full-time members of staff across New South Wales. So I think if I'm right on that, that's a data scientist, a analyst, and a head of department. Is it quite nice having that kind of, they call it in American sports, war room, but that kind of someone you can bounce off analytical ideas and stuff before you take it to the coaches and potentially to the players? Yeah,
definitely. Working in the team is always a lot better than working by yourself. So you're 100% correct. We have, I'm the women's analyst. We have a full-time men's analyst. We have a data scientist who, Scott Peterson, helps make me look smart when I have a lot of issues for him to solve that the coaches need. And he does a great job at making me look smart. And then we've got a head of department as well. So a head of analysis who doesn't really sit with either men's or women's team, but that
overviews the process.
It frees him up to overview, help out at a session if he needs, and be able to look at the big picture of things too. So, what's the newest tech coming out? We've got a new facility we've been in for the last 18 months. Where can we get that facility better for our programs and where can we have different impacts? So him being able to oversee and view the whole big picture is massive in terms of our department being able to develop and keep offering new things. I get the best of both worlds, being able to stay full time with the team, as does our men's analyst Mike and the data scientist there, Scott, to help us all look smart.
It's always helpful when someone else can provide you good data from kind of the backroom staff as well.
100%. And like that, working in the team is awesome as well, because I would have had a random request from a coach or a list manager or something, and you build a little bespoke dashboard or something like that, and no doubt in 6 months' time or 2 years' time, something from the men's side might be asking the same question, and I can say, hey Mike, I've already spun up something like this, so you can sort of start with this, and then you can tinker it for your coaches or whoever's asking how you need, and vice versa. That happens all the time. So having that sounding board is awesome, and it helps our whole department get a lot better.
And that collaboration, I can imagine, is so key between the men's and the women's. So moving on to your Sydney Sixers experience, am I right in saying you've been in the role with the Sixers for the last 2 years?
3 years now, 3 seasons.
3 years now. Oh, brilliant. How has it felt this year? You kind of went through the first draft in the WBBL, and then you had Elisa Healy's. Well, you also unfortunately over in the 100 on the last game, your key marquee player Sophie Eccleston was injured, so she's out of the WBBL. You then had Elisa Healy have a freak incident with her dog, which then meant that she was ruled out for a good proportion of the tournament. Surely you were feeling at the start of the season that the fates were against you.
It definitely felt like that. Particularly coming off such a successful season the year before. We were clearly the best team in the comp and set the record for most amount of wins in a regular season, and fell short on the final day. So we were pumped to try and go one better last season, and it did feel like the world was against us a little bit. I guess with the Eccleston one, we were sort of fortunate that happened a week before the draft. So
right. So that you could adjust plans for her.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, we'd spent a couple of weeks talking about all our plans, and then that kind of went out the window once that happened. But we did have a few days to be able to adjust there, which was nice. The Lisa Healy one was tough. Obviously, there aren't that many keepers going around Australian cricket, and no one near her caliber. So that left a big hole for us to replace leadership-wise on field, and as well as her skill with the bat and the gloves as well. So it definitely did feel like the odds were stacked against us, and we struggled to start the season, but we found a way. Once we got 1 or 2 wins on the board, and we finished the season well, and to only finish 1 point out of finals, I think we can't consider that a successful result, because we want to be winning competitions, and we know we're a strong franchise. But it was a good comeback from where we were, and considering all the external factors that happened to us as well, it ended up being a decent result.
How important will that be? So Healy was out, and then Katie Peller was then brought into the wicketkeeper position and batted up quite high in the order. Only 18. How important was to her to actually, now she's got a WBBL experience, and then she can go forward into other seasons knowing that she's had that in quite a precious situation. You're coming in and replacing an Aussie great in a sense. How important was that for her to kind of feel good around the group and get that experience?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I think the more we look at list management and things like that, I think the more opportunity you have to get games into your younger players, the better. So that might come by unfortunate circumstance with injury to some of your first team players, but for someone like Kate to come in and be able to bat at the top of the order for the first couple of games, or keeping to likes of Elise Perry and Maitland Brown, Jessica and Ash Gardner, and some of the biggest names in world cricket, is only going to help her for the future. And that experience, just being a part of 2020 cricket, franchise cricket, there's crowds, you're under lights, and you've got family and friends in the crowd, and a few extras with a lot more pressure. There's no doubt getting games into something like that is only going to hold them in good stead for the future. So try and make the best out of a bad situation there, but no doubt that'll help set Kate up for the next couple of years and the rest of her career.
Absolutely. Who do you know is who's the most interested in, for example, coming to you and is a bit of a cricket badger and a bit of a kind of a stats wizard? Who will ask you the most questions around about game days and in a tournament?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of them sort of do it in their own way. So, like Lauren Cheadle, for one, is, yeah, she's a massive, we'd say cricket nuffy. You guys say a cricket badger, but yeah,
I like that.
yeah, she loves her numbers and her footage and absolutely everything. Yeah, Elise Perry's another one. Obviously, she captains our team, so she's always amongst the numbers and yeah, quite an inquisitive person. So she's always asking the hard questions that make me have to do a lot of work in the back end to find out. But they're often the questions that are worthwhile investigating because she's got a great cricket brain. Ash Gardner loves watching her matchup footage from the last sort of few years and trying to work out and break down how she's bowled to a certain player in previous years and if it's going to be more of the same or different. Lisa Healy can be quite targeted, so she can go for games not worrying about numbers or video, but she's a secret cricket nerd at heart and she loves to pay me out for it, but she is a secret cricket nerd as well and maybe not so secret now. She's captain of the Australian team and no doubt in those conversations up there as well, but a bit more targeted. So not worrying about the numbers as much, but maybe looking at her setup to a certain bowler last year and did she bat on leg? Did she bat on middle? And she batted really well against that player last time. So trying to sort of replicate that, but so she can be quite specific. I think that's the beauty of our job. We get to be able to cater to all these different players and what I spoke about before about providing value. That's not going to be the same for your whole squad, the individuals there. So you got to be really, individual and finding out the way that people like to prepare and where I can provide the most value and try and keep everyone happy.
And that's the key with working back into that talk about how key it is to be full-time and in with that one team is that you understand who's going to come for you for what information. Just how you talked there, Healy's more looking at herself and her own reflections and footage, whereas Cheadle wants actual hard data and footage as well. So it changes per individual.
100%. And, just the little things with being full-time. So in the past, I might have sent out vision, sort of export the playlist straight away, and you might have 5 or 6 balls in a 1-minute video clip. And we know that players' attention can sometimes be finite. So you want to be able to have, again, the most impact in the shortest amount of time that you can. So instead of having 5 or 6 balls in that minute, being able to spend the time to clip up every piece of vision that I send to a player, that they now get 10 balls in that minute. So they're getting double the footage, or again, if that's a 2-minute video, they're getting 20 clips instead of 10 clips. And I think all that has a massive impact, especially in the franchise tournaments where you don't have a lot of time between games and you don't have a lot of time to scout your opposition. So the most impact you can have in the shortest amount of time for rolling down to a team meeting, about to get on the bus and go play a game that a player can look at while they're on the 15-minute bus trip to the ground and feel like they're prepared and ready to go.
That's key. Going on to, I've got a not analytical question at all. You said on your She's in the Game podcast that you're quite a coffee snob. Where have you had the best coffee and the worst coffee on your travels?
Yeah, good question. I've got my little espresso here now in the morning.
Black coffee is better. Why just black? Not a fan of milk?
You just get a bit more of a flavour with just the espresso sometimes. So yeah, I'm a black coffee man. I'm not against milk. I have nothing against milk, but you can just get a bit more of the flavour of the bean sometimes.
Yeah, the texture.
Yeah, worst coffee is always at a game on match day. So you can't go out to the cafe during a game, obviously, and get a nice brew. So yeah, it's often whatever batch happens to be.
It's just mixed together and shoved in front of you.
Yeah, and it has to do the job, and it does. It does the job, but it's definitely not the most pleasurable cup of coffee I'll ever have. Best one is tough. I order my own beans. I've got a subscription, and so that's always nice. Get a different bag every month and a few different flavors with the context in mind. There's a cafe called Subco Cafe in Mumbai. Cricketers love their coffee, and a lot of them will always sniff out where the best coffee is in whatever country they go to. We're fortunate to have pretty good coffee in probably Sydney and Melbourne in particular. So whether we go overseas or to another city, we're always trying to sniff out the best coffee, and it's the most unassuming cafe. It's a local Mumbai laneway up a side street, and you wouldn't pick it, but you go through the doors and up the stairs, and you can get some seriously good coffee. So after not having a good coffee for 4 or 5 weeks there, that definitely tasted like the best cup of coffee I'll probably ever have.
Would you say going into that Mumbai Indian squad, you were the biggest coffee drinker, or are there other players that absolutely smash it down?
Yeah, good question. There's always a few players that smash it down. So like Haley Matthews, the West Indians, they always love it because they're up till all hours of the morning, and then they'll sleep in till midday and be fine to play a game. Chloe Tron's another one. So a bit of a mix of, your coffees and your Red Bulls and all that. But whatever gets you up for the game is cool with me. But I know we had a good time trying to sniff out the best coffee.
That's class. So moving on to your time in Mumbai. Now, this is going to be a very techie question, so any casual listener might get a bit lost. But who provides your data out there? Because if my understanding is correct, like throughout Australia, you have a same software that you use, and you get the same video from that. Who provided your data out there, and who provided your video for the tournament?
Yeah, so Mumbai Indians work with a company called Sports Mechanics over there. And they have a whole platform, which is not a coding platform, but just a database and sort of a vision warehouse as well, where I could go do all my scouting through there. Obviously, I still have access to all the international competitions around the world with Fair Play, our software we use in Australia. So I could use a bit of both. So if Sports Mechanics didn't quite have something that I want, I'd be able to find it in my Fair Play database and vice versa. So I kind of had the best of both worlds, but it was a bit of a challenge heading over there, and you're so used to the way you do things and the way you scout and what you provide to coaches and how you go through vision is all a very set way of carrying out that process when you're working with teams in Australia, and then heading over to Mumbai and using their incredible database and all their resources.
There's so much data. You're like, I need to first start where I am and then build up to potentially doing more expansive stuff.
Yeah, and then so once we get 8 or 9 games into the tournament, I had a really good handle on, okay, well, if I want to know this, I can find this here in Sports Mechanics. Whereas, it was almost like an overwhelming amount of data, which is good. Like, that's what you want. You'd rather have way too much than way too little. But again, you get there a week or two before the tournament. You're trying to work with all these new software, new processes, and you've got games on. Then you're playing games every 2 or 3 days, and there isn't heaps of time to be able to sit down and sort of upskill yourself in that area and working out who's who in the zoo. But we got there towards the end, and obviously being able to go over there now for a second season, it'll be really easy to remember where everything is and sink my teeth into it straight away.
It'll be a bit more of a calm learning process than a, wow, how do I deal with all this?
Yeah, definitely.
So what was your experience? You went over you got the connection with Charlotte Edwards at Sydney Sixers, and then she was the one who brought you into the setup. What was the experience, first of all, for that first auction? Mega auction, you have completely clean slate. How did you even go about starting to plan a team and working with the Mumbai Indians team on who you wanted to build up with?
Yeah, I think we were extremely fortunate to be working with the Mumbai Indians, a global superpower. So they've been through 15 auctions with the men's team, and they know how everything works. And it was probably something we didn't quite understand. So Lottie and I and a few of the coaches were able to get into a room as soon as we got there, and we kind of planned, we might try and look at this player and this player, and we'll see how all that works. And we're pretty happy with the plan we came up with. And then a couple of days later, the whole Mumbai management team came in, and I said, yeah, that's like, you've almost sort of gone to the end point straight away, but we need to strip that back. And or if we don't get this player, then what are our other options for that that position? When do they come out in the set order of the auction? Obviously, if you get a player there or you spend too much money early on, that's going to affect who you go for later on with different roles and the amount of money you have. But it was an extremely unique situation for a couple of reasons. So one, we'd obviously never been involved in an auction process before. So working out how that was going to work, and there hadn't ever been an auction in the women's game before. So trying to work out how do you actually value a player was really challenging. So looking at an all-rounder, okay, they bring 2 skill sets with the bat and ball, maybe field as well, throw in some leadership stuff. Have they played in India before? Does that mean they're worth double or triple the money of, just a fast bowler that, might bowl in the power play or bowl all 3 phases? How much money is that worth over someone that's only going to bowl 1 phase? So it was really unique trying to actually value players and, work to a salary cap and all that kind of stuff. But it was a really cool challenge. And I'm fortunate that Cricket New South Wales lets me go over there to India last year and this year as well. And I'm able to sort of bring back that knowledge. So, when we had the draft last year for the first time in the WBBL, I'm able to provide that knowledge of, how it's not quite an auction. It's a lot easier than an auction.
It is, because you don't have to, with an auction, you actually have to, to the upper level, you're trying to bring down people's purse. So for people, might bid for people that you don't really want in your team, but then when someone you really want comes under the hammer, you have enough money to actually go the distance, and potentially the opposition teams doesn't. Whereas a draft, it kind of you just work out who's on the slate still and can bring into your team.
Yeah, we worked that out with WBBL. It's a lot easier in a draft. But, you might be looking for a top order batter and you want to spend 200 lakh on this player. If you miss out on them, then maybe you go for the second player that's only worth 100 or 120 to you, and you now got to spare 80 or 100 lakh, and you don't want to go home with that in your pocket. So again, having so many fallback plans with, if this happens and then this happens and this happens, and if we miss out there, then we can go harder for this player, or we want to target this player and go harder for another player that wasn't in plan A. So just a lot of different planning for different scenarios and hypotheticals, and there are a lot of late nights there in Mumbai with the auction planning, but it's all worth it at the end. And I think we saw that last year. I think Delhi and us at Mumbai were the 2 best teams in the comp by a long way, and we're probably the 2 teams that nailed the auction better than other teams last year, and we saw that this year as well. In the auction, you try and plan and work out what other teams are going to do, and a couple of other franchises were a little bit rogue in their selections that we thought might strengthen their team better, but you can see the way that Delhi do it with Ben Jones and the whole Crick Viz model there, and the way we prepare for our auctions at Mumbai. We're the 2 best teams by a stretch, and that doesn't always translate onto the cricket field, but it was nice last year that did, and we were the 2 strongest teams and got to battle it out in the final.
For one specific player, I think we won't dance around too many specifics because obviously you've got a tournament, the WPL is coming up. But for Hayley Matthews, was it quite interesting to see a caliber of a player of her caliber drop to the second round of the auction, and then you have that strategy in your back pocket to decide, right, we have our list of players. This is where she's come here. Now we're going to pick her. And then was it quite satisfying to understand your strategy and then see her play so well in the tournament?
Yeah, it was awesome to see how Hayley went about it last year, and I don't think anyone expected her to take the competition by storm like she did. But she's obviously a quality player, and that's what the Mumbai management kept telling us about auction dynamics. You never know what's going to happen, and I think particularly going into the first year of a mega auction, clean slate, no players for any team, and I think a lot of teams had certain individuals that they were pretty keen on getting, and matching bids and trying to bid whatever they could to get certain players, and other players just got forgotten about. Obviously, there's only a limit to 6 overseas per team as well, so you've got to figure out where you want to spend your money for overseas, and obviously she's an all-rounder, which is a huge asset. The other thing was she was in the first lot of the auction, so the first marquee lot. There were a couple of big players. I think Nat Silverbrunt, Ash Gardner might have been in the second lot of the auction. So a lot of people were holding their cash, hoping that they might get one of those two big overseas players and spend their money there. So, and then again, for the second round of the auction, you've got to look and see how many spots you have available. So if you've used all your 6 overseas slots in the first round, that's good. It makes your decision making a lot easier in the second round because you don't have to think about overseas. But it obviously gave us the opportunity to take someone like Hayley Matthews. We came back after the first round and had a look at what our squad looked like and what our best 11 might look like. And there was a nice gap up there for the top of the order for an opening batter, and first and foremost, and the ability for her to bowl her off spin as well was secondary to that. But we know how important all rounders are in the women's game, and the way she took the tournament by storm with the bat to start with was unreal. And then we saw her value with the ball, being able to have the golden arm at the end of the tournament and take the most wickets was, the secondary skill that we thought was a huge bonus, and ended up being one of our strike weapons on the wearing Indian pitches over there. So, it is funny how the auction dynamics play out, and you never quite know what's going to happen. You can go in with the most set plan and set limits for players, and the way the auction works, it's so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, but that makes it exciting as well, and very nerve-wracking on the day. But it's good to be able to look back, and obviously the first year we're extremely fortunate to get Hayley in the second round, and again that planning to be able to have a little bit of money left over and sort of swoop in and take some players for their base price was part of the planning as well. So all came to fruition, which was nice.
Okay, came to plan. Looking at second year, you had less business to do in the second year of the draft. Would it be fair to say you looked for one big target, and then you also very important for you to look for Indian domestic talent?
Yeah, definitely. I think the way we had to look at it at Mumbai was we had the lowest purse, so the lowest amount of money compared to the other 4 teams. So we knew it was going to be really hard for us to outbid teams on the bigger players and the more popular Indian domestic players because we just simply didn't have the money to be able to compete. So we had the one overseas slot that we needed to fill, and a couple of domestic slots as well. And for us, it was about where we were going to be able to strengthen our 11 or our best 12 or 13 players, and trying to spend the most money there. And then, if we're able to pick up some of the domestic players that we rated quite highly, we can do that as well. But they're always the ones that you can't quite plan for, the domestic players. You just don't know which. We also have some scouts at Mumbai. All the other teams have scouts at these domestic competitions, so you don't know that. You think the player that you think's the best middle order batter in Indian domestic cricket, you might be the only one that thinks that, and you get them for 10 lakh at base price, or what we saw with Kashfi Gautam, someone that we rated as well at Mumbai, but we never would have expected her to go for 200 plus lakh or whatever she went for, and that's what can happen. That's the auction, and when 2 teams like a player, and what happens in these mini auctions where sometimes there's a lot of money that some teams have and not a lot of spots to fill, and they target their one player they think is really going to strengthen their 11, and they put all their resources into it, hoping they can pick up a couple of players for base price. But no, it was a lot easier this year. Did a lot of the hard work. Last year, obviously setting up a really strong squad. So only a couple of changes for us, which made it a little bit easier, and a couple of earlier nights rather than the late nights of year one.
A bit more of a calm atmosphere, but still the excitement to kind of get through a second draft. Was it important to, when you were kind of planning it out and when you're recruiting from Indian domestic cricket is still, in the women's game, is still very much developing. Were you very much understanding and trying to go off local knowledge and local scouting knowledge rather than maybe looking at the hard and fast data?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. It's always hard to look at the data, particularly when you don't know the standard of the competition or things like that. So yeah, we have some scouts at Mumbai
It's hard to quantify that.
Yeah, it is. So they, again, they have their opinions on players, and they might say, I really like this player. And they might have the data to back it up. They might not have the data to back it up. And that's hard. Cricket's sometimes a game where it's all sort of based on feel. And, we did this 20 years ago when I played. So now I'm coming back as an ex-player coaching. This is what we do. And, I struggle with that quite a lot in our analytics space, where you always want to be driving the game forward and trying new things and having the evidence to back up your selections or your matchups or whatever it is. And sometimes living in that world of feel and unknown, I'm not a massive fan of that. So trying to combine what the scouts think with a bit of data. Obviously, we have our assistant coaches at Mumbai are head coaches in the domestic circuit, so they know the players really well. And then the main one for us is we're able to hold trials at Mumbai. So if there's there are players we really like in domestic cricket, the scouts like, we can bring them for our trials. And then when I'm over there for the trials and Charlotte comes over, we can have a good look at these players rather than just looking at footage. We can see them in person, and straight away you can sort of have that bit of an eye of, we think that they might be a real player, or maybe they're not quite there yet, maybe in a couple of years, but good to keep tabs on how they progress in domestic cricket. So it's a combination of all of the above, but it is a bit of a challenge in that setting to try and make decisions based on data. A lot of the time what we see around the world is everyone loves data when it backs up their opinion. So look, they scored 200 runs in 3 innings. They're a really good player. But when they think they're a good player and they haven't scored the runs, then, don't worry, they've just been unlucky, but we think they're a really good player. So the stats are always there to back up their opinion, but no one likes to listen to the data when it challenges opinion. That's where I've got to find the line, and depending the playing group or the coaching group that I'm with and my relationships there, how the team's going, a lot of different factors as to how far do you push a certain point based on data. Because again, you're working with some of the best minds in the game, whether it's the players and the captains and the leaders there, or someone like Charlotte, who's played the game for years and a really successful coach. They have amazing cricket brains, and it's not fair for me to discount that either, running saying, these numbers are jumping off the page, we have to do this.
It's how you can challenge that tactically, and how you can go use your numbers to challenge that, but then also support that. So it's a conflicting space, and it's always, I like one of the words that you said earlier in this interview was in the podcast. It was like investigate, which is brilliant, because when cricketers and coaches have theories, then you can use the numbers to challenge those theories or support those theories.
Yeah, and then that's when your relationships with the coaches and the list managers and the heads of cricket really come to the fore, because you can present that, and the best way is to be able to present that information to them in a way that's going to be the most impactful. So again, it's going to be really hard if I don't have a good relationship with a coach and I'm trying to present them data that goes against their opinion, then that's going to be really difficult, because if it's a new relationship and I get them offside pretty quickly, and all of a sudden if they don't trust my opinion early on, then it's going to be really hard to try and gain that respect back down the track. So you want to work with these new coaches and new relationships and show where you can add value, but at the end of the day you want them to trust you as well. So when it comes to the crunch and it's they're really important decisions, I'm fortunate that all the coaches I work with, I've been able to develop that kind of relationship where the opinion I have isn't, or one, I'm allowed to give the opinion and I'm not just sitting there behind the numbers, but that opinion is sort of valued as well, just as much as anyone else around the selection table, whether it's a head selector or a head coach. So fortunate to have built those relationships, but yeah, having those relationships makes it easier to have those discussions when you're not necessarily supporting their opinions with the data, when you might be challenging them as well.
Nah, I definitely get what you mean there. Well, when do you head out for the WBBL, not WBL, the WPL next?
Not long.
It's coming up soon.
Yeah, we'll head out a couple of weeks before the tournament, so it might be the 7th of Feb or so. So yeah, just over a week. So it'll all happen pretty quickly. I'll pack my bags and be ready for another 5 or 6 weeks of fun over in India. Yeah, not far away.
Great. Well, best of luck for that. And just to finish off, how did you start a running TikTok that has documented your running process? I'm really, really interested with how that came about. You decided this is a hobby, this is something I enjoy, I'm going to start filming this and I'm going to start publicly talking about this.
Yeah, I thought that might have slid under the radar there. No, I quite enjoy it. So I think I quite enjoy my running. We spend a lot of hours behind the desk looking at a laptop in our work, and I find the running is an awesome release for me, just to get outdoors and put away the stresses of work or life, for an hour or two or however long it is, and just sort of have that time to myself is really important. But yeah, a year and a half or so ago, I think I started it more as an accountability piece. I wanted to do 365 days of fitness consecutive. And then, so I thought, I'll document this on TikTok. And it wasn't, because it was a public forum or anything. It was more just an accountability piece for me to, try and keep up with the streak. And then, that ended up ending because I got COVID in May last year. So then that, 100 or so days in a row, and then that stopped. But I actually quite enjoyed creating the content, I guess similar to what you do, but you create that little community that are all there and always sort of liking and commenting on your videos, and they become invested in you and what races you're running, and vice versa. You see their videos pop up, and I've actually been fortunate to have some really good friendships come out of that.
It's fun to share that niche kind of knowledge and niche interest in something with a kind of a small community and people who are also interested in that. How important has it been mid tournament in both in the WPL or the WBBL to get out there and run for your own mental health? Yeah,
it's so important for my mental health. Yeah, one for the physical, but for the mental as well. I know more because that's that time for myself. We spend a lot of time in our job doing everything for everyone, and there isn't a lot of me time in there. So for me, running is my me time. So phones on do not disturb. I don't pick up the phone unless it's the head coach calls 3 times in a row, and he knows the rules.
Where's Benji gone? Where is he? Why am I not got this stats pack? Where is he? You just running down the harbour side.
Yeah, he knows the rules. So if he calls me once and I don't pick up, I'm probably running, and I won't call him back till I get home. But if he calls twice, then I know it's important. So I'll pick it up. But it's so important to have that time to yourself. I reckon I saw a stat on, it might have been LinkedIn or somewhere a while ago, but 90% of analysts in sport quit before they're 30. And after a couple of years in the job, there's no secret as to why that would be. You're working so many hours, and it's hard to relate to your mates that have a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, when you're working every day, early morning, late night, weekends. When it's middle of the season, you've got no idea what day it is. You're just worried
Especially when
about.
you get into the season, it is all encompassing. And yeah, your 9 to 5 friends are like, right, we'll go out on the weekend and stuff. And you're just, well, I can't. I have a game. I have us getting all the information for the next game, getting all the information for the review. So it can be all encompassing.
It definitely is, and I find it so important to have that outlet and have that me time, even if it means running so many hours on a treadmill in Mumbai, because I didn't want to run outside when I was over there for the competition.
I've got the stat here from one of your from one of your TikToks. You ran 400 kilometers on a treadmill in a Mumbai hotel. How do you get through that? Like, are you listening to podcasts? Are you listening to music? That is just the repetition is alone.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. I think the longest I'd ever run on a treadmill was an hour before last year, and I absolutely hated it. Once or twice a year.
It's intense.
Yeah, and when I'm running outside, I love to listen to podcasts for, go for 2 hours when I'm going out and running for 2 hours. But what I found on the treadmill is I just had to keep changing the stimulus up, because you're looking out the same window, looking at the same Mumbai skyline for 6 weeks. So I could only do 20 minutes at a time. So if it was that 20 minutes of music, or 20 minutes trying to watch the football or the cricket or whatever's on, 20 minutes of a podcast, just had to keep changing it up to get me through. But yeah, I was silly enough to have a marathon booked in April last year. So being over in India for February and March, that's kind of the crunch time for your training, where you're running your most mileage. So I was silly enough to have to do all that on a treadmill. So I was smart this year. I haven't booked in an April marathon. So I'll just be jumping on the treadmill when I want.
That's class. And how important do you think it is to have a life outside of analysis as well, to be able to balance that with your running, in the fact that you can take yourself away? We have such an all-encompassing job, especially in the season, that you can get absolutely pulled away with going into like a data spiral or creating a plan. How important for you is it to have that disconnect from the cricket and the analytics world?
Yeah, I think the more years I have in this job, the more I realize how important it is to have that time to yourself, and that time with your friends and family as well is probably the biggest learning. So I've always had my running, but the first year or two in this job, as you say, saying no to a lot of friends who are catching up for a couple of drinks or for a coffee, and you say no because you've got scouting for this team tomorrow, and then you have review to prep, and you're playing this team in 2 days, so you've got to do that work as well, and the players ask for this, so you've got to do this, and the coaches ask for another request, so you've got to try and cater to that as soon as possible. And it's so easy to get lost in it. So I have a little bit of a trade-off with myself, where 90% of the time when friends ask me to do something, or seeing family, I'll say yes to that as much as I can, rather than the easy option is to say, no, it's too hard. I'm absolutely cooked. I can't get out and spend more energy. I think it actually does the opposite. So having those social interactions and a bit of enjoyment, a bit of time not spent between you and your laptop screen is so important, just for refreshing you mentally to be able to go into your next day of work. So whether that means you might have a late night into an early morning, and you might miss out on a couple of hours of sleep, or you go out for dinner knowing that you're going to come back at 9 o'clock and still have an hour or two of work to do before the next day. But I've learned that that's a trade-off that I need to have to keep having those social interactions to keep me at my best. Otherwise, as you say, it's so all-encompassing, and it's so easy to get lost in the job as the only thing you have, and then not knowing what to do with yourself when a tournament's over and you're crawling back out and seeing your friends for the first time in 6 months, and that's not what they want, and that's not what you want either. So it's so important to take care of yourself and your own mental health and physical health in a job like this, which can be so demanding.
That's great to hear, Benji, because I definitely think that's a balance that I'm learning as well. I think first year, knowing, like, getting to know players, getting to know staff, being a bit starstruck by it all as well, working in professional sports, which has been a dream for me, that as a young analyst, you can get very caught up on it. But the more you get into it and the more that you realize, right, I want some longevity into this, the more you realize you've got to balance that. And it's great to hear that you've got that kind of going for you at the moment and in your job.
Yeah, and I think, as I say, it comes back to the relationships you build as well. So, if it was my first couple of months on the job and my head coach is calling me when I'm on a run, I'm stopping the watch and I'm picking up the phone, because I know that's the relationship that's really important, and I need them to back me and value me, and I need that.
I know you'll work great. I know you're keen at the start to do what it takes to present and give them as much information as possible.
Yeah, because then if that's someone that doesn't know me, they say, oh, well, I'm putting my running above work and they want the information like this, I'm not committed to the job, which, as we know as analysts, it couldn't be further from the truth. You're probably more committed to the job than anyone, because you're spending the most hours doing it. So again, spending that time to build those relationships is so important. When I started, you're working across both teams, as we touched on, and it feels like you're in a little bit of a silo, because you're jumping in for one team, then you're going out and jumping into another team, and you're not really fully entrenched or part of anything. So, being back on one team full time, you build the relationships with the coaches, and they get the most out of you. So instead of getting together some stat packs or putting up some vision that you might think is really important, but it actually doesn't have any effect on the playing group or the coaches you're with, you're able to spend more time building that relationship and working out, okay, well, when we're about to play a team, what do you want from an opposition analysis perspective? How are we going to tailor this to the group? And it's a real sort of small group plan of action into how we're going to present things. And then I can be the most valuable to the group and to themselves and what information they want. So yeah, that relationship's super important, but can totally understand how hard that is in your first 6 months or first season working with a group. You really do bury yourself trying to do the right thing and get the right image. And yeah, off the back of building those relationships, no doubt in 2, 3, 4 years down the track, and you start to get a bit better work-life balance, which is a really healthy thing.
You can understand when to pick up the phone and when to be a bit more, when to go hard and when to really, I don't need to be on my laptop right now. I need to pull back. Thank you very much, Benji. I feel like we've been recording for over 50 minutes and it just so much knowledge. And thank you very much for sharing everything from WPL to your running journey. It's been much appreciated. And thanks for coming on the Catcher podcast.
No, thanks for having me on. Love what you're doing. And I can't wait to listen to more of the Analyst Chat segments and hopefully learning a lot more from people a lot smarter than me.
Well, thank you very much, Benji. Cheers.
Thanks, Andrew.